Before bringing the amp rack into the car, I removed the cover for the little hidden compartment here, removed the cover for the wire here in the running board, pulled the carpet back, exposed the whole area. Also removed this whole side panel here, just so we have everything exposed for where we need to go. Before you start running the wires, make sure you have the amplifier screwed into place. Do a final check. Make sure that it's not making any rattling noises. You want to find those before you run all your wiring, so just give it one final test. It always is going to fit just a little bit different now that you have all the wiring on it than it did when you're just test fitting the amp rack. So kind of keep that in mind when doing it. Sometimes you do have to make a little adjustment here or there, maybe make a hole around a screw a little bit different because it had to twist just a little bit. My next thing that I need to get to is running these wires. I need to make sure that where I'm going to run them is not going to get trampled on by the seat when it goes back into place. Get my grounds into place. Sub wires, these are going to be up on top, so I'm just going to stretch those and make sure they're on top of everything else. I have my bolt here for that. It's 12. I need to cut these to length and get ring terminals on them because they're a little bit longer than I need them to be because of the kits that they came in. My power wire is going to fit perfectly in my groove, so I can kind of snake these up front so that Fernando can get them hooked up to the battery without waiting for me to do all this other stuff back here. Tuning ring terminals on. This actually turned out to be a 13, not a 12. And the nice thing is that this bolt was on there before the car was painted, so we have a nice shiny silver on both sides. All we have to do is put our two grounds in place and tighten this bolt back up. The last step, of course, is to add some zip ties to make it all uniform and not look like just some randomly placed wire. All set there. Power and ground back here are taken care of. That leaves my RCAs and speaker wires left to deal with. They are going to be a little bit more of a challenge. We want them to come along this area right here. There's a nice dip in the floor that we want to use. It's real convenient. Now the last thing I want is any dips in the carpet or anything like that, more so than there already are. There are a bunch of really like half-inch thick grooves in this floor. I'm gonna separate out the RCAs and the signal and put them in those grooves using this to cover them up and hold them in place. Perfectly flat. It's a deep groove all along here that makes it great for doing this and then just rubbing my hands over it. I always want to check the area when I'm done for high spots or anything like that. This is perfectly flat. It's almost like it was made for this. It probably was, but that gets us one of the cables, which is the RCA. That is, I put over farther this way. Now I have a run here for the speaker wire, which I'll do next. Next thing I have is the subwoofer wires, which of course, once we get the box in, we can hook those up. That leads me up under the seat where we need to hook up all our speaker wires and our RCAs to get that part of it complete. And of course, meet Fernando up front underneath the hood, check out what he came up with for a fuse holder. The first step under the seat was getting the RCAs zip tied into place and plugged in. 1 and 2 being the tweeters, 3 and 4 being the doors, 5 and 6 being the rear, and 7 and 8 being the subwoofer output. And then zip tying those all up and getting them out the hole here. Next is figuring out which of these wires from the iData harness I'm going to need to retain to get my speakers to work. Not all of them are going to be necessary, and they just have them labeled output 1, 2, 3, and stuff like that. This also gives me an opportunity to make sure all the polarities are correct. I have a pad of paper. I have a PT9A Plus, a second PT9A Plus, so I can go around to the speakers themselves. We'll start with the smaller of the two plugs and see what that gets us. Oh, that's gray, and that's giving us this door here. It also says number 3. Now I'm gonna play a hunch. I wanna see what number 1 is. Number 1 sounds like the 3.5 in the dash. Let's find 2. Now, following this logic, number 2 should be the 3.5 in the passenger dash. And it is. 4 then should be the passenger door. Ooh, we're 4 for 4. So the small harness appears to be the whole front end of the car. Grab 5. 5 might be center channel. Got nothing out of 5. 8 is center channel, which we're not using. So let's move on to 9. And 9 is passenger rear. Ooh, 10 is actually the headliner. Let's go back to 11. Seems to be passenger door. The other one was the headliner speaker. And that is the driver's side door. So 11 and 12 are driver's side doors. On the bigger of the two harnesses, I just need 11 and 12. The rest of these wires are not going to be doing anything. That means I'm going to remove all those because I don't want all this just chilling out in the car. And then we'll test the polarity on all of these speakers. Much cleaner harness, just 2 wires. The reason why I have 2 PT9A pluses is this one is going to sit here and generate the pulse. This one I'm going to walk over to the speaker and make sure that I'm getting a green light on it. And I'm getting a red light, which is fine because that tells me that the wires that I have connected are backwards here. Flip them here. Now I can go test it again. All right, now we have what is positive, negative on that speaker. I just have to repeat the process on all the 5 other speakers and then hook it up. I've soldered all my wires together using the color codes that we figured out. How I like to finish this off is there's 2 different types of Tessa tape. One is exterior, one is interior. The exterior is a much more rigid, you need scissors to cut it. And I'll cover all the wire itself with that. Where I've made a connection like this, I'm going to put a break in the wire. And I'm going to use interior Tessa tape for that because it peels off much easier. The reason why I put a break in the tape is so that I can service the wire if needed without having to pull all this tape off to get to my point. Once I'm done with that, I'll pull back this. Here are my factory harnesses right here. I'll plug it in and we're 1 step closer. And that finishes up everything we need to do underneath the seat. If you remember way back at the beginning of the video when we were taking the seat out, there's that cool piece of carpet that goes here. Right now it's not in. The likelihood of it getting forgotten is pretty high because you know, you did all this and most of the time there isn't anything back here. But we do need to put it back in. We just need to remove this area where this is. I want to set it in place first. I'm going to take some blue tape and mask off the area where I want to remove, and then I can take it out of the car, cut it. Alright, now if I just follow this nice blue tape line, it'll give me a nice clean piece that I can remove, and if they need to, they can always tape it back into place if they take the stereo out. And that gets us our piece back in. Before we get the back seat in, we have to do a couple things. First, I gotta put the seatbelt back in because that's not gonna go in. That we took out after the seat was in. Secondly, we need to turn everything on and make sure it works. After that, we can put the new risers in to lift the seat up and get the seat into place. We have to test everything first, and we're almost to that point. Pretty exciting.